Hey folks, Nathan here. This is Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games, and we are now moving on to part 10, believe it or not, of our look at Ascension. This is the 12th of the Ascension main sets, known as Valley of the Ancients. It is the most recent as of the time of this recording, here in January of 2018, although we do have a Year 4 Collector's Edition we're also going to be looking at, but we'll do that next time. This is a new set focused around one main new mechanic, but that also introduces a couple of new keywords, so let's take a look at what we have. We again have a set of game rules that actually covers all the rules rather than being truncated to just the new mechanics from this set, as we saw in some of the earlier small box sets. And we have ourselves a nice color game board. And in this case, we do have some new spaces available, so we have our Cultist, Mystic, and Heavy Infantry, our always available cards, a space for our Honor Pool, a space for our center row. We then have our center row deck, or our main deck. We have our void to put characters into, or to put cards into as necessary. But then we have three new spaces down here on the bottom specific to this set. These are spaces for the Temple of Life, the Temple of Immortality, and the Temple of Death. This entire set, in most respects, is based around the idea of getting control of one or more of these so-called temples. As always, we have our always available Mystics, 20 of them. We have our always available Heavy Infantry, 20 of them as well. We have our Cultist, as always, just the one, because we're used to the idea that you don't actually put that into the void or anything. You just kind of hit it, get the reward, and keep on going. And then, of course, we're going to have our individual decks. As usual, people start with 8 apprentices. And we'll start with 2 militia. And we have it up here for 4 personal starter decks, just like we're used to. Then as for our center deck cards, we have a total of 99 this time. And they're all, of course, marked with a new set symbol that looks like a temple down there on the bottom. They are, of course, the newer design that we've seen for the past few sets. We, of course, have our honor pool that we're used to, 25 clear 1 honor tokens, 25 red 5 honor tokens. But then we have 3 new cards representing those temples. Again, the Temple of Life, the Temple of Immortality, and the Temple of Death. And they all, at least to start with, are down here along the bottom in those 3 slots. And as you play, you're fighting over control of them. So let's look at how that new mechanic works, then we'll check out the new keywords and wrap this one up. It's a fairly straightforward set, minus those 3 new additions. So, in order to gain control of one of these temples, you'll notice that the Temple of Life and the Temple of Death have a different symbol up there than we're used to for acquiring something. It's not a rune, it's not power, it's this special symbol called a keystone. One has sort of a death's head, the other was sort of a tree design. As you play, you will run into cards that will give you that symbol as a reward for something you've done or as part of using that particular card. So for instance, Shadow Ridge Scout here, Echo, we'll look at that in a second, what Echo means. Gain, and it's that Death's Head keystone. Gain this effect if there is a void card in your discard pile. Okay, so we have our Death's Head symbol. So I play that card, and if I get that ability kicked in, then I've got that symbol, and I can then spend that symbol to acquire control of the Temple of Death that then sits in front of me while playing the game. Then as I play, if I get another one, while I'm in control of the Temple of Death, I can then spend it, and it says gain control of the Temple of Immortality, which is the one in the center there. You may banish a card from your hand or discard pile. Okay? So you've got that ability, but you also gain control of the Temple of Immortality. What does the Temple of Immortality do? Notice there's no cost up here. The only way to gain control of this is through either the Temple of Death or Temple of Life. In this case, if you control it, once per turn, choose a faction. When you acquire a card of that faction, if the next card to enter the center row is also that faction, acquire it without paying its cost. So you have a rally type of effect going on, but it's happening per faction each time, as opposed to it being focused on one specific faction and one specific card space. But again, it's once per turn, so you can sort of pick and choose when that's going to happen. The Temple of Life, let's say I get a card that gives me that symbol, the Life Keystone, like, say, Blind Seer. Serenity, we'll look at what Serenity means, to gain, there you go, Temple of Life keystone there, blah, blah, blah. So if you gain it, you can then spend it, get control of the Temple of Life. If then you get it again, you can spend it while you're in control of the Temple of Life, gain control of the Temple of Immortality, gain 2 runes. Okay? And again, Temple of Immortality does the same thing when you get your hands on it. So in essence, being able to get the keystone once gives you a temple. Getting the keystone a second time then gives you the Temple of Immortality and is able to give you some other benefit. And then if you get one again, when you're already in control of the Temple of Immortality, it just gives you that benefit of either, banishing a card from your hand or discard pile or gaining the 2 runes without regaining control of the Temple of Immortality that you already have control over in the first place. And the Temple of Immortality gives you that rally-esque ability. So kind of neat, but not exactly game changes or anything like that. I mean, it's introducing essentially a new currency, the keystone that you need to grab, and these cards to control, but they're not necessarily going to break the game or make or break a game. But again, it does mean that because the only cards with access to those keystone abilities are going to be in this set, I would recommend playing this one by itself rather than combining it with other sets, as you technically can, because that would dilute the number of cards you're able to pull that are actually going to have those symbols or let you use the actual temples. Now, there are 2 other keywords involved here. As I mentioned, we have the Echo keyword and the Serenity keyword. The Serenity keyword allows you to do something that only happens if you have no cards at all in your discard pile. So, for instance, in the case of Blind Seer, that was how we gain that keystone there. Gain this effect if there are no cards in your discard pile. But then you've also got Echo. And Echo relies on you having cards in your discard pile that have the same faction as the one that's doing the Echo ability. So Echo, gain, again, another keystone. It says gain this effect if there is a void card, because this is void, in your discard pile. And that can change, of course, which one you're able to use, Serenity or Echo, throughout the course of a turn. Because remember, every time you acquire a card, it goes straight into your discard pile. The cards that you've played that turn just sit there in front of you until the turn is over, and then they go in the discard pile. But as soon as you acquire a card, if you're sitting there at the beginning of a turn with an empty discard pile, you're basically shutting off the Serenity abilities and gaining Echo abilities if it happens to be the same faction as the cards out there with Echo. I actually find that those are more interesting ways to change up the game mechanics than the Temple mechanic. The Temple mechanic feels kind of like a gimmick. It's only going to apply to this set, whatever. Echo and Serenity, you could maybe see those keywords going on into future sets, and it'll be interesting to see if it does. I would also note that in the past, every once in a while you'd run into a card that has an effect while it's in the center row. Those cards now have this sort of weird lightning, sort of orangish yellow border around them instead of black, so they're easier to spot starting in this set. And that, folks, is Valley of the Ancients. Not one of the more complex new additions to the Ascension library, but the 12th set if you're looking for a little more variety in your Ascension gaming. Next time, we'll take a look at the Year 4 Collector's Edition.